If you want to run faster for longer and recover better, building your aerobic base is the foundation. But what actually is an aerobic base and how do you build it without running yourself into the ground? In this video, I'll break down exactly what aerobic base training is, how it fits into your training year, and the key workouts and habits you need to build it properly. So whether you're a beginner runner, a seasoned runner, or you've just hit a bit of a plateau in your running journey, working on your aerobic base is going to be one of the best things that you guys can do to help elevate your performance. Now, your aerobic base, by definition, is your body's ability to use oxygen efficiently for a sustained effort. So, of course, the more you develop this, the more a stronger runner that you guys become. It will not only help build up strong foundations, but of course set that platform for you guys to layer that speed work in when it comes to that time in your training block. So when do you build this type of training into your year? Well, if you look at the year over a 365-day period, there's a couple of ways to do it. I've got a preferred method, but the first one is going to be your first, let's say, 4 to 6 weeks of a training block. So if you're doing a longer training block, let's say between 16 to 20 weeks, those first 4 to 6, maybe even 8 weeks could all be base work. It's a chance for you to get a little bit stronger, a little bit more powerful before you start laying on that specific work. The other way you can incorporate it is doing a dedicated training block for it specifically. So maybe 8 to 12 weeks worth of work. This is actually my preference and kind of what I'm doing now really, as I get myself ready to launch into marathon training in a few weeks time. Of course, either approach is absolutely fine. I think the former that I talked about is more of a common practice, but I think what I would ask you guys is, if you look at a year in the form of weeks, that's 52 weeks. If you're doing maybe a couple of big training blocks in a year and you're spending 4 to 6 of those weeks doing base training, you're maybe looking at 8 to 12 weeks in total out of those 52 weeks in the year that you're just working on that foundation. Whereas if you end up doing a dedicated 8 to 12 week block a couple of times a year, then you could be spending well over a third of the year doing that really good foundational work, getting you stronger as you build through the year. So what type of runs would your base phase consist of? Well, starting off, the obvious one, easy running. I've talked about this a lot in recent videos, but only really just touched on the topic. You might have heard me talk about it where I was talking about Jake and Cole, their incredible mileage that they've done in recent training blocks, maybe in the long run video, maybe in my pre-marathon video. But easy running really is the foundation of everything we do. And I think it becomes even more important as your mileage increases. You should be running these nice and slow. Everyone says conversational pace. Effectively, you shouldn't be out of breath at all. In terms of breathing patterns, again, I've talked about this before. I often go for a 5-5 or a 4-4 breathing pattern, where I'm taking 4 steps to 1 breath in and 4 steps to 1 breath out, or 5, depending on how easy I'm going. But I appreciate that doesn't work for everyone. So if you use heart rate data, then of course you can go by your heart rate zones, or if you're just out on a social run, make sure you can have a good chat with your friends. Steady or moderate runs, whatever you want to call them, are next. Again, that's just that little step up from easy running, but it is again underneath your LT1, your aerobic threshold. I've said this a few times, talking about that is a video in itself, but at the moment all I want you guys to think of is that if you are running along and nice and easy and you just take that little step up, you kind of feel like you're running your easy runs just a little bit too quick. You feel like you're pushing things a little bit, but you still feel relatively in control. It's kind of a good definition for a steady run. You're just ticking over a little bit quicker than you would do if you're running easy. Of course, the bread and butter is long runs. Getting those good long runs in are fantastic. You can delve into the world of long run workouts, but you're never really looking to do anything crazy hard. Maybe just some gentle progression runs, maybe just some negative split long runs where you're starting easy and finishing steady, or just full on steady state long runs, or just nice, easy, slow long runs. As I've just mentioned, progression runs are another one to drop in there. Again, starting nice and easy, moving through the gears to steady, and maybe just finishing below marathon effort. Those are really fun to do, some of my favorite. Personally, I don't do them enough in my training, but every time I do them, I absolutely love them. They're just a good challenge to try and step up, whether you're doing it in time increments, mile increments, kilometer increments. Either way, they're just a good one to do. And finally, maybe some people do them, maybe some people don't, but I often find putting in strides 2 or 3 times a week is just fantastic. And to be honest with you, I'll often use a hill if I can, so I'll do hill strides instead of flat strides. At the moment, for me, I'm doing them a couple of times a week. I've got a dedicated hill workout that I'm doing actually, but on top of that, I'm trying to incorporate them on a Monday as well. And I'm only doing 4 times 20-second strides on that Monday, and I recommend that a lot of people just spin the legs out with 4 by 20 seconds. It's absolutely ideal, very standard practice, gets the legs turning over nice and fast while you are in that base phase, because what we've got to remember is we're not really touching on that speed work too much, so the strides really help us keep in touch with what it feels like to run fast. In terms of volume, what volume do I recommend? Well, to be honest with you, this is the chance for a lot of people to push the volume up slightly because the intensity within the training is down quite low. Obviously, they don't start on week one by pushing their volume up higher than they ever have before, but they might aim to peak in that training block at a higher volume just because, as I said, there's very limited intensity in their training week. So it's a good chance to bank some easier and steadier miles, which of course means it's a lower injury risk, meaning they can experiment to see if their body can handle a few extra miles or kilometers. Or for other people, it's not a chance to push the volume, it's just a chance to find that consistent routine again since they've had some time off. I always say this, and I've said this recently actually, base phase is a great time to train, something that I've really adopted that philosophy of at the moment, where it's just a case of getting your body ready for what's to come. So you're getting it into the rhythm and routine of what schedule you're about to go into, popping those slightly more intense runs, maybe a steady or progression run on those days where you are going to have a workout in the future, just trying to simulate in the best way possible your upcoming training weeks. Strength training and cross training is also brilliant for this phase. I've always said this, when you jump into that specific training block that you've got coming up, whatever it is, and then kind of you get those flashbacks from, oh my gosh, yes, I remember this happened in my last block, this happened, weaknesses appeared, injuries happened, and you vow to yourself that next time I'm going to get on top of that and address it. The problem is that people start to add in intensity, maybe even volume at the same time. Not that I recommend that, but sometimes that can happen. And then they remember that they've got to get on top of their strength training, so everything gets added in one go, and it's just an overload for the body. So this is a great place to start to get into that habit, that routine. Incorporate those exercises that you said to yourself that you would do in that next training block, so that when you do launch into that next specific phase, that goal race training, you're not overloading your body with everything all at once. Some key things to avoid during this base phase: make sure you're not running your easy runs too quick. It's actually quite easy to do that in this phase, if I'm completely honest, because of course the intensity is not there, so you're going to feel a little bit fresher. What you have to remember is all of that work, all of that faster stuff is to come, and that intensity is going to be added in very soon. This is the chance for you to lay those foundations and build up that base by being controlled. At this stage, it's not only going to build good mental habits for the next phase, but you're also going to get the right benefits from this one. Avoid that temptation to skip whatever run you have and drop in a harder workout here and there, because of course the base phase is, let's say, the unsexy work. It's not the most exciting of running. We can do our best to make it exciting, but ultimately it can be a little bit monotonous, which is why I think a lot of people can sack it off relatively early and then just jump straight into some more specific work. Do your best, as I just said in the previous point, to stay controlled. Remember, that's all to come. If you get this job done well now, you're more likely to nail that next phase. Make sure you keep on top of that rest and recovery. This block is no different to any other training block. Despite the fact that the intensity is less, if you skip that rest and recovery now, once again, you're just going to pay for it in the long run. And I'll just reiterate one more time, keep this controlled. It doesn't need to be anything special. Remember, we want to save that magic for race day. Everything you do now is building towards that moment, and of course, building towards you guys becoming stronger runners. So how do you know the training's working? Well, there are a few signs that you can take. Your heart rate. If you track your heart rate, you'll notice that you're running at a lower heart rate for the same pace. That's very, very common and a really good sign that things are working. Also, effort levels as well. If you don't track your heart rate, you'll notice that for a certain pace, that effort is going to feel a lot easier than what it used to. Those long runs start to become easier as well. You're noticing you can run longer without getting fatigued as much. That's another real telltale sign. For me personally, I can often find going from the shorter distance back up to the marathon to be a bit tricky, and it usually takes me 2 or 3 long runs to really get used to them again. I can often find that first stage of getting back up to 2 hours a real struggle, but the second you complete that first run at 2 hours and you go, gosh, that wasn't as bad as it was 3 weeks ago, you know that your body's starting to adapt. Your recovery feels easier and better in between each run, and in general your breathing is just a lot calmer and your form feels a lot smoother. Everything just starts to click and you start to feel like a well-oiled machine. So as I said earlier, this phase is just really important for laying everything down so that you can launch into your next specific training block in the best shape possible. As I also said, I know I've touched on a few of these points in previous videos, but I wanted to do a dedicated video to help you guys understand, especially if you're feeling a bit lost with what the whole aerobic base thing is, especially for the newer runners out there, and just explain why it's so important. As I said, I'm currently in a similar style of training block. I've adapted it slightly, but at the moment I'm not touching any top end speed. It's going to be a shock to the system when I get back to those workouts, but I know that dedicating the time to that right now is going to set me up really nicely, and I do try and do this a couple of times a year. So as I said earlier, in terms of the preference of adding the base phase in to the start of a training block or doing a dedicated 8 to 12 week phase, I choose that dedicated section all day long, because I know in a year, if I get a couple of those done, a lot of my year is going to be spent in this foundational phase, and I'm just going to have some good results later down the line. And of course, if you guys have any questions, please do feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'd love to get back to you. If you've got anything to share on this topic or anything to say, it'd be great to hear your opinions too, and I'd love to hear if you dedicate time to doing a base phase in between your training blocks. Please do let people know. It'd be great to hear your thoughts down there. If you enjoyed this video, guys, then you might enjoy this long run video up here that I did recently. This gave you guys some suggestions of the type of long runs you can put in your base phase, plus the ones that you might want to add in when you get a bit more specific over this summer, ready for those goal races. And if you enjoy this one, you might also like this one down here. I'll see you guys over on one of those.